Good morning, ancient Egypt! It's a beautiful day and one of the world's first superpowers. We've come a long way from hunting and gathering, and the fertile soil of the Nile River not only feeds its people, but provides wealth on a level never before seen. Egypt's location on the Mediterranean Sea made it the capital of the world for the grain trade, but we still admire the fruits of some of their profits. So, if a Boris Karloff wannabe decided to wake up and walk the earth, what would he think? Would he be happy to see homage paid in music videos and corporate logos? Would he listen to rap? Well, whatever he thinks. Let's hope it doesn't happen anytime soon. What's going on and welcome. Yeah! It's in 5 minutes or less. Today we'll be talking about ancient Egypt, or Kemet, as those folks would have christened it. As I'm not a fan of
false advertising,
we'll be making channel history today with our first two-part episode. In today's episode, we'll learn about Egypt's early history and those wacky mummies they keep making movies about. Let's just not talk about the third one. Meaning black land, Egypt was named after the fertile soil of the Nile River, which empties in northern Africa and is the longest river in the world. Stretching over 4,000 miles, it surpasses the width of the continental US and then some. Once a year, the Nile would flood, leaving nutritious soil and sediments called silt all along its banks. People have lived along the Nile River since the Stone Age, but our earliest records of a unified Egypt come from 3150 BC, roughly 1,000 years after our friends we met in Sumer, Mesopotamia. Before that, Egypt was divided by two rulers, one in Upper, or Southern Egypt, and one in Lower, or Northern Egypt. The odd naming for Egypt's geography comes from the fact that the Nile, as opposed to most other rivers in the Northern Hemisphere, flows from south to north. This occurs because of the higher elevation of the Nile's southern source in Sudan, so it flows at a slightly gentle incline toward the Mediterranean Sea. Anyway, back to the story. Menes was the king of Upper Egypt, once again, to the south. And likely in pursuit of land and more nutritious soil, Menes sent his armies north and conquered Lower Egypt. In respect to local customs, rulers, now called pharaohs, from that point on would wear the peshint, a headpiece that combined the crowns of Upper and Lower Egypt. Menes established his capital at Memphis, and by uniting the two countries, paved the way for arguably the biggest superpower of its time. Civilizations wax and wane, and while empires usually average a lifespan of about 250 years, ancient Egypt civilization lasted for an astounding close to 3,000 years. Egyptologists split their history into the Old, Middle, and New Kingdoms. However, old school might be where it's at, as many of the relics we admire today, like the Sphinx and the Pyramid of Giza, come from the Old Kingdom. In fact, Cleopatra, the famed partner of Julius Caesar, maybe you liked her because of her pharaoh bones, lived closer to us than she did the construction of the pyramids. The Great Pyramid of Giza, Cheops, Khufu, take your pick, or just Great Pyramid, is the only survivor of the 7 wonders of the ancient world and sits 454 feet tall in the Giza Pyramid complex outside of Cairo. The tallest building in the world until London's Lincoln Cathedral in 1311, its construction was ordered by the pharaoh Khufu around 2600 BC. It was built by the combined labor of slaves, farmers, and aliens. Called Mer by the Egyptians who built them, pyramids were tombs that housed the corpses of dead pharaohs. Egyptians believed that your body in this world would be important in the next, which led to the preservation of pharaohs in the form of, you guessed it, mummies. The process of mummification was based on an Egyptian myth where the god Osiris, after being murdered and dismembered by his evil brother Set, was put back together and revived by his wife, the goddess Isis. The pharaoh's corpse would have most of its organs removed and placed in containers called canopic jars. Then, using salt, priests would dry out the corpse for about a month before wrapping him up in bandages and resin. Egyptians believed the pharaoh would spend his first night in the underworld facing challenges, before rising with the sun and then literally becoming it. Most Egyptians would face the scales of justice of Anubis, the later half-jackal god of the dead, but the pharaoh was exempt. Nice to know things haven't changed in 4 millennia. Gods in Egyptian religion pretty regularly featured hybrid qualities with specific animals. The chief sun god Ra had the head of a falcon, as did his son Horus. Isis had wings, Sobek had the head of a crocodile, Bastet had the head of a cat. You get the idea. A god himself, the pharaoh was associated with Horus during life, and the god of the dead Osiris in death. At Egypt's height, the pharaoh would likely be the richest man on earth. The wealth produced by the grain trade explains how the pharaohs could build such elaborate tombs. To avoid looking uncool like their mummies and daddies, pharaohs around the time of the New Kingdom began being buried in the Valley of the Kings, which was closer to the new Egyptian capital of Thebes, or Luxor. The Valley of the Kings possesses a host of treasures, but unfortunately not among them is part 2 to this video. If you liked it, feel free to pay us a modern equivalent to a grain tax by liking and subscribing. That way, you'll know when you can find out about Egypt's decline. I mean, it definitely declined, right? Right? It did. We'll see you next time.